Hello there. Last week I was completely unable to record, and that was the first time since this channel changed to mainly anime type of content that happened. It is a true shame, but there is several things going on in my life, from the already mentioned in the previous video earthquake in my country to things like my thesis being right at the corner. I am very close to also taking my thesis. So, there's several different things that are colliding with each other and making this a way more difficult thing to do. However, I still have time to make videos at time, and I do not want to abandon the channel, and as such, I am gonna keep moving forward. But because of all of that, I decided that I wanted to watch something that was lighter, something that I can watch in a single go. And as such, I decided to watch a movie. A movie that, for the name of this video, you can maybe know. If you do not know, look back at the video to know that I'm talking at Look Back. Look Back was a one-shot story created by Tatsuki Fujimoto, the same creator of Chainsaw Man and also Sayonara Eri. This was the other one alongside Eri that came out right in the middle of his hiatus between the parts 1 and 2 of Chainsaw Man. And both of them were actually fantastic, but only one of them, being this one Look Back, decided to give it a full anime. I do not know if Goodbye Eri or Sayonara Eri is gonna get one eventually, but if it does, then this video is gonna be outdated. And if it's not, then it's gonna be a shame because Sayonara Eri is also amazing. Regardless, what we're talking about here is about Look Back. Look Back is actually a kinda simple story. It follows the life of Fujino, a girl that from early on in her life was considered to be a quote unquote prodigy in terms of creating manga. But for certain reasons, she has to follow some different path because of another person. Now, this story is very interesting because it has several different aspects that are very human like. First, Fujino is not a person that is just doing things because of the love that she gets for it. Eventually, she does fully love it. But it's very obvious from the get go that she is kinda looking for attention. She loves being praised by being the best artist of manga in her whole class. And as such, she keeps doing it simply because it gives her some benefit, or in this case, something gratifying, which is listening to others praising her. It is kind of a egotistic type of thing, a little bit, and that is great because that's why this character is all about being an egotistical character at first, and something that we see throughout basically the entirety of the story. And in the middle of all of this is when the other character appears, the character that is gonna change Fujino's life. A mysterious girl, also a mangaka apparently, that is extremely talented in terms of drawing. Now, something interesting and something very unique is that we know that Fujino is, for the most part, more of a story type of mangaka. It's way better in terms of relating with the story rather than the actual art style. Now, Kyomoto is the other way around. She quite literally cannot make stories, or we do not see her do any story whatsoever, but her art style is absolutely fantastic, to a point that makes this girl Fujino being extremely jealous. She saw this girl that was supposed to be just another person from another class but her same age, and she was several times better than her, to a point that even in her own class, she that was seen as this pseudo deity, it's obviously a big exaggeration, but whatever. This girl that was seen as someone very respectable because of her great art style, all of a sudden, she is nowhere near close Kyomoto. And Kyomoto is by far the better artist. Even if Fujino is indeed still a better mangaka because of the stories, There are different things, and now she's not the undisputed best of them all. No, from early on, we actually do not know who Kyomoto is. She's very shy, very reserved. We actually do not know anything about her, period. For the first like 15 minutes, 10 minutes of the only 1 hour movie. But what we do know about her is about her insane talent. But eventually, at some point, she and Fujino had to meet each other. It's very obvious. And that happens in the graduation from, I think it is elementary school. It might be it might be middle school, but the system of Japan has like three schools, so I do not know which of the first two is. For a thing called Destiny, also known as the mangaka creating the story and obviously giving the more interesting twist to things, Fujino is the one that has to give Kyomoto her diploma, her whole thing of graduating, and as such, they finally meet each other and learn about each other. We learn very quickly that Kyomoto, despite being a reserved girl, has something, and is that she is a huge fan of Fujino. She knows everything about the story of Fujino as a mangaka, which is basically the things that she did for the school, newspaper. And as such, she was kind of an otaku from a girl of her own age, which is like 13 years old, 14. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but you know, it makes kind of sense. She saw her as this girl that not only was able to create manga, but also do it while doing other things. She never missed at school, unlike Kyomoto that never went to school basically, despite the fact that she was also a mangaka. So, with all of this, alongside the fact that, Fujino actually makes stories, made that Kyomoto saw her as a true icon for her. But with all of this is when they start actually getting along with each other. Not only they were just creating manga, but they were doing it together. There were certain in-betweens of what happens and why Fujino actually decides to make some manga alongside Kyomoto, but I do not want to spoil everything. I'm just gonna spoil 97% of things. We start watching them both grow closer to each other as friends, but also as mangaka and her artist. It was very cool to watch, constantly developing this cute yet juvenile type of relation between two friends, and that they were just friends. You can make this a romance and all of that, but I think that it would not be as strong if you try to think about it in a romantic way. The fact that they only decided to do it in this way and in this whole thing of not having relationship, just friendship, I think that Fujimoto make a fantastic job at it. But obviously, like every story, there has to be a point that something happens. And that something big is in the middle of the story. After multiple years of them working with each other and evolving, both as friends and her whole thing, all of a sudden, Kyomoto decides that she is not worth of actually being the artist of Fujino. She feels like she is not worthy both because her art style is not good enough yet, but more importantly because she is not fast enough for what Fujino actually needs, which is actually a fast artist because she is soon gonna start working in a manga magazine that makes content weekly. And as such, you cannot have an artist that cannot make the dates, as everyone knows. And that whole thing is kind of brutal. The manga war is insane. That's why so many different mangakas die very early from struggles, injuries, illnesses, or they get in long hiatuses. I'm still waiting for you, Togashi. Please come back. Now, because of this, is why their relations start crumbling and actually falling apart. Not because they stop caring about each other, not because they stop liking each other as friends once again, but simply because they were more distant. Now, with Kyomoto going to art school and Fujino working every day in a manga magazine, they had little to no time to see each other, so it was very difficult for them to advance their relation. And then we see all of this thing of Kyomoto slightly developing as an artist, but more importantly, actually Fujino developing as a mangaka. She turning better and better. Now she has not only the other things that she did in the past as one shots, but she has finally her whole full on manga. And that manga looks very, very familiar. That looks kind of like Chainsaw Man. Because, yeah, the story of Look Back is not a full on made up story, but rather the story of the life of Tatsuki Fujimoto. Tatsuki Fujimoto makes a masterful plan with this manga, in which early on feels like it's just gonna be another normal story, kinda juvenile even, or maybe like Sayonara Eri, in which is more of a full on love letter to what he loves, which is the movies. Maybe this was just a love letter to manga creation as a whole, but no, this is not just a story about how he loves creating manga. No, this is the story of how he become a mangaka, actually. From this point onwards, we basically see a lot of the things that he loves about manga, but it kinda changes your perspective. Now it's not just the story of a Fujino girl that kinda just likes manga after just wanting to do it for other reasons, but now it takes a whole different tone. This is not the story of Fujino, this is the story of Fujimoto. This is the story of a guy that actually wanted to be a manga artist, a mangaka, someone that actually wanted to put his name in history. And we see that through the lenses of Fujino. We see a development of her whole career. We see a development of how she turns into a more advanced and more expert type of mangaka until something finally happens. And it's very, very big. In the middle of all of the success of Fujino as an artist, as a mangaka, is when Fujino comes back. It doesn't actually appear though. What? Why is that? And that is because Fujino discovers that there was a big attack in an art school that happened to be in Japan. The same art school in which Kyomoto was enrolled, in which several different people died. And as you can imagine, one of them was Kyomoto. Now, this whole attack is very huge, but for multiple reasons. Of course, it changes completely and drastically the events of the story moving forward. Now, it's not just the story of a mangaka, but rather someone losing another person that she deems as someone very important to her because of a tragedy. But there's something more. This tragedy doesn't happen in real life, or does it? Because, yeah, the way in which they portray this is very similar and is the actually inspired by it, by the attack of Kyoto Animation, in which almost 40 people died because of an arsonist. The same attack that made Kyoto Animation go into a hiatus for multiple years. This was absolutely crushing when it happened. One of the biggest studios in the history of anime was almost destroyed overnight by a crazy person that said that robbed, they stole his ideas. Nobody knew why he said that. To this day, I think that is a mystery. But regardless whether it was true or not, whether it was just a maniac or not, it was something very big. Animators, workers, even some bosses, all of them died in that attack that set Kyoto Animation back for multiple years. It was something to mourn. Yet, after all of that, there was also this story. This story represented that attack in a very personal way. Tatsuki Fujimoto, as any mangaka, as any animator, as any artist, should have felt crushed when that happened. Someone was attacked just because of what they draw, just because someone didn't like it what he was seeing. Or maybe you can say it in another way. You can say that it was just because of this delusion of him believing that it was indeed his ideas, but we are never gonna be certain about it. What we know is what we saw. That is that a person killed almost 40 other people just because he believed that something was wrong with Kyoto Animation. This was one crushing event that was a before and after for Kyoto Animation, and maybe even for anime as a whole. It was very tough. And as such, it also affected mangakas, artists, animators, as I already stated. It wasn't just, oh, someone was attacked, and that's it. Maybe, oh, someone was injured. No, it was dozens of people that were affected directly. And who knows how many families, at least as many as them. But considering other things like friendships, like maybe even girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, wives, it might have been over 100 families that were directly affected, without even mentioning the consequences for the studio itself. It was crushing, and Tatsuki Fujimoto showed it as such. Obviously, he wasn't able to fully portray in the same way. At the end of the day, this is a story kinda about him a little bit, but also about manga as a whole. More about creations related with manga rather than animation. Yet, this was a tribute to them, a beautiful tribute or what happened in Kyoto Animation Studios. The tribute might not have been from another studio. It might not have been from something like Studio Bones, Madhouse, or even Mappa, or some of the others like Ufotable or Ghibli. Yet it still was a huge tribute, a love letter to the creation of art in Japan, anime, manga, call it however you want. And this was not just a tribute, but a look back at how beautiful the manga world can actually be. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you want more content like this, talking about different type of movies, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If we had the chance to grow, it would make me very, very grateful. And now, without anything else to explain, once again, I hope that you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye. Bye. Bye.